people to stream in to this event live, but I would like to thank you for joining us today to introduce to our community what are agents and how we can build them in Cargo. So very happy for you to be here.
Yeah, and congrats on the launch. I remember I started to building Cargo maybe a year and a half ago, and I was doing some like HubSpot integration, enrichment stuff with some complex logic, and since then, like everything looks completely different. You have agents, so the product's evolving. So congrats on that.
Yes, we're very excited. I think it's a new capability for a lot of people joining us. And welcome to the people streaming in as we speak. So I see Ben, Caleb, Marine, Maxence, Prajwal, one. Thank you for coming in. To people on Contrast and similarly to people on LinkedIn, welcome. We're very happy to have you here. Today we have a special feature where we do a cross collaboration with this project called workflows.io, which you'll discover shortly later in the call. Um, as we were saying, I mean, there's a lot of people in our community who come to us who are playing with agents. There's others who are curious about agents but haven't yet, operationalized them. And so this is our opportunity to sort of, unveil the capabilities of what agents can do, how to build your own agents, and what to build them for. Right. So we have a pretty packed sort of session for you guys. Um, so I think we have enough people to get started. Dan, maybe first of all, before we dive into the content, let's start with the hook.
Yeah.
Why are we talking
So
about this today?
yeah. What do Amazon, NVIDIA, McLaren, KPMG, Anthropic, and Gucci all have in common? They're all in different niches. They've all reported to be using AI agents for some sort of GTM use case. So I think that's an important thing to note is, the lots of big names already moving early on this. That being said, if you're here in this webinar, in this workshop, and you're thinking about this stuff, you're still early, and we'll get into some stats on why you're early in just a second. So if you feel like you don't know agents that well yet, like I said, you're early, but hopefully even if you're really well versed in agents, you're still going to learn something today.
Excellent. And so, right before we jump into presenting Dan, for the people in the audience on Contrast or LinkedIn, please tell us where you're joining in from the chat and tell us what do you know about agents today? What would you like to know from this workshop? And we're going to try and make this adaptive to you. Another bonus, well, there's two bonuses today. Midway through this presentation, Dan has prepared us a very cool list of use cases you should be building today for your AI agents. So we're going to be sharing that with you. Stay tuned. Don't go onto your other tabs in the Chrome browser. The second bonus that we have is that we're starting a special batch in the GTM engineering community where Dan is there and so are our agents live. So everything we discuss here, you can play with and build with us in that batch. If you're already part of the community, ask us and we'll put you in that channel. If you're not part of the community, there'll be a QR code at the end of this event where you can get into the community and play with us. So this is something we're introducing now to get playing and building with agents as quickly as possible. Without further ado, Dan, who is Dan and why is he here today talking about agents?
Yeah, so I actually just started a new company called Workflows.io, and we're launching to the public next week. I'll explain a little bit more at the end, but we're an AI first GTM studio helping with basically every important GTM channel you need to think about. We're going to be doing AI agents, outbound content, RevOps stuff, and LinkedIn ads. So literally everything that comes to mind when you think GTM, we're going to be helping specifically B2B technology companies with. So yeah, excited for what I have to speak about there. But this is about Cargo, and I've been super impressed playing with Cargo and the new tools available to me. I've used N8N, obviously Zapier and Make. I've played around with Relevance. Obviously, I've spent way too many hours in Clay, but I'm really impressed with Cargo's feature set, and it's an exciting time to be in this world.
My favorite part about your new adventure, Dan, is that your logo has the same sort of identity as Cargo. So we're glad that you went down that design direction. For the audience, just to give you a bit of a signposting. So today we're going to do a pretty comprehensive session. So we're going to talk about what are agents, what you need to know about them to get started with, how do you implement them into your GTM organization. We also obviously have a demo for you to show you how we've built this first agent with Dan and in Cargo, and we're going to take you into the back drop of it. We're also going to talk about architecture, and we're going to leave you some use cases that you can get started with today once you're done with this event. And as I said, we have that bonus for that special batch that we're starting afterwards. Juan, welcome to the workshop. To respond to your question, yes, this is being recorded. So for all the attendants of the webinar, the workshop, and the people who registered, we're going to be sending the replay. So look out for that. And obviously, we're very happy if you share that with your screen, with your team. And if your team likes it, then bring them to the GTM engineering community, and we can play with the agents together. So that's where we're headed. Dan, what do we need to know today about GTM agents before we dive into building them?
Okay, well, first things first, like I said, we're still early. This technology is about to exponentially grow. So what we're using to build agents today is probably going to look very different in a few years. But by learning the tools available to you today, you're going to position yourself to be, way better off when this stuff becomes easier, or in some cases harder. And we're going to have a discussion about where the space is headed towards the end. But essentially, right now, I think agents are best off for human in the loop. And we're going to speak about the different types of agentic architectures. But agents essentially allow you, and in this case, for your GTM staff, to multiply your team's productivity, to amplify your human potential times 10, times 100, whatever stat you want to put to it, and allow one person to get more done. And with the human in the loop agents that we'll be showing in Slack, you always are kept in control. And so it's really like, it's not about firing people, it's about making people more efficient. And I think you'll see exactly how we're doing that with the very cool demo that I urge you guys to try out yourself in the Cargo community, because this agent we built is pretty cool.
Excellent. Give us some numbers, Dan. Where is the world headed?
So this comes from a few different sources, but the AI agent market is predicted to 10x in the next 5 years, hence why you're early. Of all the AI agents out there, Salesforce says that 65% of them are being used for GTM use cases, sales and marketing use cases. And 54% of enterprises in some big survey have reported to intend to use AI agents specifically for sales and marketing. So everyone's hopping on this. I think we're seeing a lot of snake oil being sold, like a lot of people saying that they're using agents in all these areas. And if you've built agents before, like it's tougher to get stuff in production than have it be demo quality. So hopefully this gets you one step closer to having production ready AI agents.
Something that's very interesting for the GTM people in the audience, which I guess is the most part, is that when we speak to Series B, C, D, the sub-enterprise companies, there's a lot of impetus from management, so CXOs, who are creating a strategy for how to implement AI agents in their organization. And GTM use cases are usually top 2, top 3 use cases. And so if you're in the GTM engineering space, this is the right time to sort of jump onto this train and master it before you get left behind. That's my sort of takeaway. Dan, we always start with a definition. How would you like to have our audience understand what agents are functionally doing?
Yes, you can read the definition on screen. I want to kind of highlight how you can think about them a bit more practically, but they're AI-powered automations that handle repetitive RevOps tasks. So they're smart workflows that read and analyze, act across your GTM stack. I'm going to explain this a bit better if you're still confused. So this comes from Manthan Patel on LinkedIn. He posts amazing AI agent content. So this graphic on the right is from him. Highly recommend you follow him if you want to learn about the tech behind AI agents. But I thought it was the most succinct summary of what an automation is, what an AI workflow is, and what an AI agent is. So if we're thinking about an automation, it's just a sequence of events. It's what you've probably built in Zapier or Make before. As Boolean logic, it's when this happens, then trigger this. When this happens, then trigger this. So it's deterministic, predefined tasks, and it's honestly the best for reliable outcomes. No matter how good AI agents get, automations are always going to be around. It's only going to keep growing as well. And so because they're very predictable, fast to execute, but they're obviously limited. When you have something extremely sequential and deterministic like that, it only is going to do what you program it to do. It's going to struggle with complexity and also non-deterministic use cases. So an example of an automation could be you're using a software like RB2B or Vector, and you're going to send a Slack notification. Oh, no, sorry. This is just a sign up. Every time someone signs up to your SaaS, you're going to see a Slack notification. Cargo has this for themselves internally. That's an example of an automation. An AI workflow is essentially just an automation that calls an LLM or AI model within the automation. So it can have fuzzy logic because AI inherently is fuzzy. So it is best for deterministic tasks that require some discretion. So it's great for handling complex rules, pattern recognition. But you ideally, anytime you want to use AI, you're going to want to train the models effectively. And if you've done like serious prompt engineering before, you know that that's easier said than done. And you think a prompt works and then it breaks. And so it can be hard to like debug these types of workflows. But my favorite use case of this, which is the one that's mentioned in this graphic here, is to analyze, score, and route every website inbound lead using GPT. So my go-to workflow for almost any of the companies I work with is create a great target account list, and we do lead scoring using GPT because it's a bit more discretionary of like tier 1 companies, tier 2 companies, tier 3 companies, and unqualified. That is an amazing use case of AI and an AI workflow. Now, when we get to agents, these are programmed to do non-deterministic tasks autonomously or human in the loop. We'll get into that in a second. But it's highly adaptive to new variables, simulates human-like behavior and reasoning. But if you've built agents before, you know they can be less reliable. Sometimes they mess up. They can be slower to execute. So an example of an AI agent could be a full internet search on every inbound lead and update infos. So essentially how I would think about AI agents is an AI agent has a bunch of automations, tools, and workflows it can call upon. When you're working with AI workflows or automations, you're determining the sequence. An AI agent is essentially an AI that says, hey, I need to use this tool in this moment. It's going to get the output from that and say, okay, now I need to use this agent in my team, give that output to it. So it's basically deciding when to use the tools in a workflow instead of you deciding it for it. So that's how I would think about it. It's a meta layer to control automations and workflows.
Very clear. And so, Joshua, to respond to your question, ping us in the GTM Engineering Slack, and we'll share the prompt for everyone. What I like about this inbound sort of use case is, there's always this impetus, this trigger from the external world because someone, let's say, has signed up to your product, and then I think we, as a GTM sort of ecosystem, we haven't, for the most part, gone beyond this point space scoring logic, which can be very rigid. There's a lot of false negatives and false positives. The fact of adding AI into that and then having that human in the loop to pose those questions given the scenario in front of you, I think that makes sure that you're tapping into the right leads much better. And obviously, when you give this ability right to the end user, they're more likely to query to the right extent that person and then activate them as quickly as possible. So I think it's a pretty good use case to focus on. Dan, if you're happy to, let's proceed to the demo part to show people what we've built, and then we can talk about the hairy stuff about architecture and everything else.
Okay, so you want to start in Slack or?
What I suggest is let's take them through the high level.
Okay.
Then I'll give you the cue to share your
Yes.
Slack, and then you can
Sounds
live play with the agent that we've built. So how do agents work in Cargo? We have an example for you here. What we're doing essentially is we have a bot that sort of triggers the channel whenever there's someone who signs up for the Cargo product, right? Then, given this chat, we can start a thread and call upon our agent. Here it's called the website signups agent. And then we pose it certain questions and it goes back, does the work, and brings us responses. So this is what Dan is going to show you in a second live on Slack. How this works is very similar to your existing Cargo workflow editor, except that here you're using the tools that you've built. So if you've been using Cargo for a while, you're familiar with the concept of tools. Tools are basically superpowers for your agent to use to go and do work, right? Maybe it's in the external world, maybe it's in your CRM, maybe it's some other data source. Resources are a sort of knowledge hub. So that can be databases that exist in your company that the agent can use to learn and answer questions. So in this case, for example, there's an example of a HubSpot resource. And of course, there's the prompt. So the prompt you can use in this display, or the prompt can be coming from Slack or a Chrome extension, etc., etc. That will show you in a bit. And what's going on behind it at a high level is that your trigger or your prompt is calling upon the agent. The agent is calling upon tools and maybe additionally some data that exists in your organization. And then it's going back to the user to answer the trigger question that we had in mind. And with that said, let's see how it works in real life. Dan, if you could share your screen, we'll try and play with this tool.
Yes, and the agent is going to do a lot of thinking. So in those thinking times, feel free to jump in with any information that might be useful.
Will do.
So here, if any of you know Max Mitchum from Trigify.
Just 1 second. Let me put your screen in
Oh,
pin.
sorry. Yeah.
And now you're good. Yes.
So if any of you know Max Mitchum from Trigify, we're going to be, working with his company and their data for this demo. Hopefully he's fine with it. So he was actually on here a few weeks ago. So my first question I'm going to ask is, Max Mitchum just signed up. Can you find me his LinkedIn URL and phone number?
It's taking its time to respond. There you go. It's thinking.
Got scared for a second.
Yeah, it depends on the question you pose it, right? So it's going to take more or less time to respond. Indeed, Josh, Max is a legend. And I think we should get him onto the community to talk about the workflows he's been building.
Yeah, he builds some absolutely crazy agents.
So basically what's happening is, so in this channel where this agent is present, so we're calling it batch 009, you guys are going to be able to join the channel after the event. If you tag Cargo with the at the rate of, that activates the agents that are present. And then this agent is going back in the back end and looking for a phone number and a LinkedIn URL. So they're tapping into a waterfall, which will look for LinkedIn URL, and another waterfall that will look for phone numbers, and they'll see if they can find either of the two back. And as Dan says, this will take a little bit of time to proceed because there's a waterfall enrichment in the back. So it's going to keep triggering like API calls until it finds someone.
The phone number enrichment always takes a while, I think.
Actually, I find that it's variable. Sometimes it's faster and other times less so. Maybe pose it your next question anyways, Dan, and we'll see if it answers both or in sequence.
Okay, so the next question is, can you summarize the most important info you have on him and his company?
And if this takes too long, we can go back to the original chat where we were testing it this afternoon, and we can at least show people what it looks like when the results come in. Let's give it 10 seconds.
Very classic. Like it was working way quicker. Literally a few hours.
It's whenever you demo it that the things go slower, right? Okay, Dan, you know what? Let's show the demo we did this morning. I think that might be easier.
Okay, so I mean, we just triggered this set of questions earlier, so hopefully this works. So I'm saying Max Mitchum just signed up. Can you find his LinkedIn URL and phone number? It couldn't find his phone number. It found his LinkedIn URL. Then we said, can you summarize the most important info you have on him and his company? It gave us some great background around like how many LinkedIn followers he has, where he lives, what's in his background about section. And then in terms of Trigify, it gave us a really succinct description of what they do, how many employees they have, their Crunchbase and LinkedIn URL, the followers, and recent funding. So congrats, Trigify team, on that. We just did some testing to see what exact tools it used for this. So you could just read that there. Then we said, how much would you score Mitchum in terms of his fit with Cargo's tool? It scored him 70 out of 100 because he has a GTM intelligence background. His expertise aligns well with sales and marketing. Sometimes, like, Cargo really, I imagine most of the users have like GTM engineering or sales and marketing engineering, titles. So it's given him some points off for that, but it says overall he's a good fit, which I tend to agree. You wanted to see what tool he used for that. And then this is like one of the best things. So if you've ever been, if anyone here does actual like AE type tasks, you know that multi-threading is super important, and like logging into LinkedIn and finding everyone you should be speaking to, and then using the people search function, and like that takes a while. So all of this you can do in Slack. You're saying, are there any other relevant people at Trigify to speak to about Cargo? And it's found basically everyone relevant in his whole team. So you could multi-thread straight from Slack right here. And then I've asked what's been happening at Trigify recently that I should be aware of. This is really useful information. This just happened a week ago, but they launched their beta testing. So this is perfect to use, in a message and to contextualize things. It talks about their new features, attribution, how they have a community, so you can comment on that. It talks about their funding round, some of their case studies, and then how Max likes to build in public. So this is all, like, for you to get this information would take you, at least like 10, 15 minutes to really like go this deep and to get all this info. But you can do this all in Slack now with Cargo agents. So I said, can you upsert company and contacts in HubSpot with all the relevant stakeholders? It's then added everyone to HubSpot, associated them to the company. And then we asked it to draft a short and condensed LinkedIn DM to start a conversation. And then it says, great to see you sign up for Cargo. I would adjust this message, obviously, but it gets you started, removes writer's block. And that's why it's human in the loop. Like, anyone who's sent AI messages know that it's never going to be as good as a human message, but you're saving like 90% of your thinking time by doing it like this. And then we ask, list a single feature we should emphasize in our combo. This actually found a feature of Cargo that aligns with Trigify. So interesting,
interesting choice of a feature, right? Yeah. Yeah. So just so you know, the replies came back from the live, right? And Gilles, you posed a really good question on the LinkedIn chat. I'm going to answer your question in a second when I share my screen to show you what's happening in the background on the Cargo side. Joshua, to answer your question, yes, so you can do web research on Cargo. So you can build tools that leverage a web research tool. So that can be Perplexity or LinkUp, any of the equivalent tools. We haven't yet the API layer for the ChatGPT deep research, but I imagine that's not far away as well. Shall I share my screen, Dan, and show people what happened in the background to build this?
Yes, for sure.
So let me then bring this on stream. So you see that editor interface that I was telling you about, guys? That's what we've been building on with Dan here. So here I have a set of like custom instructions, sort of like a system prompt for the agent to know what kind of tool to use when, in terms of the task at hand, right? Then I can choose the model. So I have Anthropic models and OpenAI model for now that you can use. I'm just using the GPT 4.1. And then most importantly, I've built a set of tools that I've added to the repository for this agent. And so you see, like when we were asking it to enrich for a phone number, it's going to use the find phone tool. If we're trying to qualify the person, it's going to use the qualify tool, and so on and so forth. And the trick is, when you do add tools, please name them as explicitly as possible and add a description as explicitly as possible. And that really helps the agent to decrease the thinking time in getting back to you. So Gilles, to answer your question at this point, the time that an agent needs to get you back a response is dependent on two things. Number one, the decision of which tool to use, and you can expedite that by providing good descriptions. And secondly, it depends on what is the latency of that tool, because tools will have maybe API calls inside. I'll show you one example. And so the more complex the workflow inside a tool, such as an email enrichment waterfall, the more time it will take. The next thing I want to show you is you can also have access to like knowledge hubs within Cargo. So if you have a data model in Cargo that talks about, for example, here I've scraped all of the Cargo use cases from our website, and so this is a knowledge hub that the tool can use to define, okay, what could be a good use case or template to show to Max, who has just signed up. Um, then if I show you the tooling bit, which is sort of the most important part of all of this, I've built a set of tools that I thought was pertinent to answer the questions that we might be asking in this exercise. And what a tool is, if you've never seen one before, it's basically a workflow, but it does one specific job. So this one, for example, scores a person's fit for Cargo. The input is very simple. It's a LinkedIn URL. It goes and enriches that person for their LinkedIn profiles, and then it has a couple of AI tasks where it will evaluate that person, given some information that we provide inside, give them a score, and secondly, to identify if what kind of buyer persona they represent. And in the end, it spits out some information, so the person's LinkedIn, company LinkedIn, the score, their title, the country, etc., etc. So these are the outputs that the agent will use to answer your question. I hope that helps, Gilles, to answer your question. I give back the screen to Dan. Actually, yeah, maybe you've been playing around with these agentic tools all this time, right? Um, how do you compare these sort of three sort of benchmarks?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how things develop. Obviously, each has their own set of advantages. I think where I find Cargo really strong. So if you've ever built agents on N8N and you're not paying a crap ton for all these different APIs and stuff, you can't actually rent any data providers. It's something that maybe if you use Clay before, you're familiar with it. But Cargo has this credit system where I can rent data that might be actually really expensive if I were to get my own API key, and I can rent those in my workflow. And so I find that is kind of why I think Cargo is very well positioned for GTM teams, as well as like all the features are being built around GTM. So yeah, I mean, that for me, that's the highlight. And obviously being able to call workflows in agents is just kind of a unique. I like relevance, to be honest, as well. But if you've ever built with relevance, you know that a tool is basically just a giant prompt. Whereas I can get more granular in Cargo and build a specific workflow that's a bit more controllable, and then call that workflow in the agent. So I think those are the main advantages, in my opinion.
Yeah, I guess the short answer to that that question is, it's really a matter of focus, right? So because we've been building workflows and tools for GTM people, the way we've built agents as a feature is really focused on that. And then you leverage all of Cargo's like core capabilities, meaning it's just easy to do enrichment because of the credit-based system and the vast number of providers that we integrated with, right? Which will always be different to the more generalist tools like Relevant and N8N. We focus on engagement for sales and marketing use cases. So that hence we are releasing in the next few days the LinkedIn engagement. We already have the email engagement and so on and so forth. And we have a focus on enabling your sales team, because that's where we think is the real advantage of adding agents into your GTM stack. And so that's why we are so focused on embedding it across Slack and Chrome and et cetera, et cetera. So that's where, if you want to compare these three tools, if you want to start, deciding on which one to build agents in first, that's sort of the matrix that you'd use to make your decision. Kevin, you have a very good question. So essentially what I did when I talked about this CRM example is I use a data model that you can build in Cargo. And in that data model, you can choose which columns Cargo is syncing with your CRM. And so then your agent only has in context those columns to answer your questions. So essentially, in terms of data privacy, you choose which data goes into the agent. Then obviously it goes to the API, so it can go to Anthropic Systems or OpenAI, and they have access to that. And then it gets you back a response. So that's sort of the framework for how to think about this. If you want to have a conversation about it, ping me after the event on the Slack, and I can share more information. There's a question from Ignacy. I hope I'm not butchering your name. Could I share the Slack channel? Indeed. So at the end of this talk, there's a QR code. If you're not already in the Slack community, you get in, and it will immediately take you to this batch 009 channel, and the agent is there, so you can ping it just like that pinged it, and so we can start building it together. This is a new form of sort of build and play that we want to introduce to the community. So help us make this a success by coming and building and playing. Um, then let's talk. Let's go back to the big picture. So look, whenever we ship these new features, so the MCP was the same, etc., etc. Um, you have this FOMO of trying to build everything under the sun with agents, right? But obviously, as we said before, there'll always be space for like building, dedicated workflows and tools for use cases. So how do we know that a particular use case is friendly to being treated by an agent versus your regular sort of workflow tooling?
Yeah, so we showed you guys an agent we built. Please stress test it. Tell us what to fix. But I wanted to zoom out at this point in the presentation to guide you on exactly what you should do next. So in the next 15 minutes, my promise is that hopefully you have a clear idea of what to do next. And to answer your question, Tarek, when do we need agents in GTM? To be honest, I think it comes down to like two categories: either creative tasks, in which case context is so important. So like, let's say you want to build an agent that finds relevant news, relevant trending posts, and writes you a version in your voice for your LinkedIn post. So let's say a LinkedIn content agent. Well, you have to train that agent on what a good LinkedIn post looks like with enough context if you want that output to be reliable. So creative tasks, but granted you have the context for the agent to do it well. And the other is non-deterministic. So if you have new information coming into a workflow that you need something intelligent to sort through and decide between different paths, that's when I think agents are the most useful. So essentially anything that's non-deterministic, whenever a human would make a decision of what needs to happen next, an AI workflow won't do that for you. That's when you need an AI agent.
Yeah, perfect. And so good candidates for that, for example, were the inbound signups because it's an impetus from outside and the non-deterministic answer to what to do with that lead. Similarly, there's one use case that we're pretty keen on presenting to you in the next couple of weeks is agentic list building. So you want to have a micro campaign, you want to have to target 300 people on a specific set of criteria. You use that agent maybe in your Slack to start building that list. So that's super clear. Let's talk about, yeah, so this is what we cover, creative and non-deterministic tasks. What are GTM engineers today that you see, that you talk to every day, getting wrong when they build their agents?
I'm not as much on X, but if you consume LinkedIn content, you've probably seen these 57-step N8N workflow, like and comment if you want the workflow. That's cool and all, but I've tried enough of these to know that I'm often not impressed by the output. And sometimes like the simplest agents are the ones that work best and actually have the biggest ROI. So I'll be posting this on my profile next week, but essentially all your agents should be solving one problem at a time. And so if we're thinking about GTM, this is like my best summary of what GTM is, how to think about it. And so I'm not going to go too in depth here, but essentially you have different traffic generation channels and you could build agents to help you in any of those channels. So like we said, LinkedIn content agent, maybe you want to build an agent to help you optimize your ad spend, or you want to do lead signal search. You essentially want to pick a defined use case in any of these areas. So traffic generation, lead capture, lead nurturing, conversion, qualification, or retention expansion. Everything else is vanity. So really think about where is the broken part of your funnel, where are people spending the most manual time, and build an agent for that. Like ultimately, you really need to solve a problem for you or your team for agents to actually be used. So what I have a feeling, these 57-step N8N agents, they end up not being used by the team. And so like you wasted all your time. Like ultimately, the goal is for this to actually be used. Otherwise, like we're just faffing around. So I just wanted to like talk about, okay, we're talking about AI and agents and stuff, but like ultimately go to market is about growing your business. So, build agents that actually help you grow your business. That's the summation of this slide.
Excellent. Ignacy is asking, who does your visuals, Dan?
Hired a new designer, keeping that a secret for now.
Very cool. Um, Yes, so to answer Ben's question, we've been playing around with the concept of batches given the feedback we've gotten from the community. And I think for now, what's working well is that we do a theme based batch. So our last batch was about MCPs after our workshop with Joe Rue. And so what happens is we do this sort of big flagship event like this. And then off the back of it, people have ideas and questions and so on and so forth. So we do smaller sort of building sessions and exchanges, either sync or async in that batch. And hence, my sort of encouragement to join that batch 009 channel on GTM Engineering Slack. If you're not part of it, ping me if you're on Slack. If you're not, you'll have a QR code to join. And so then we can start playing around with it. And that's sort of the environment that we want to propose. Dan, tell us about do's and don'ts. What should we do and not do when building agents?
So the whole point of that graphic before, maybe it's overcomplicated. You guys can give me some feedback, but find your highest ROI use cases. And what I mean by that is, with the current state of the technology, what is the most feasible? Where do you have the actual context to make the agent work? Like if you've never posted on LinkedIn, you're not going to have the context for a LinkedIn agent. And then time spent doing the task manually. Like if you're not spending a lot of time doing the task manually and you AI agentify it, you're ultimately like the ROI isn't there. So what is actually going to push the needle and what's going to save your team time? Those are the things that I'd be weighing out. And I've fallen into this trap before, but perfect your first use case before stringing on others. I've tried to build many agents at the same time and agent teams, but like you're best off perfecting one agent, putting into production, creating documentation for your team to use, and then moving on to the next. Don't do too much at once, or else again, it's not going to be used, and all that time you spent would have been wasted.
Super clear. Um,
So just quickly to go through this one, don't just build multi-agent workflows off the bat. Don't just build something because it looks cool. I mean, unless you're getting lots of LinkedIn likes, then that helps you anyway. But and build something that your team actually uses. I think a lot of companies I'm speaking to are falling trap into that. They hire some smart GTM engineer, but they're not necessarily like integrating everything into the team.
Super clear. Super clear takeaways. Just to answer Tash's question, I'm going to be talking about credits in a minute, so stay tuned for that. Ben, to answer your question, please ping me on Slack. I think that's the best way to resolve this. Um, how to architect agents for GTM, Dan? So again, big picture thinking. How should I start? How should I frame? The different tools and prompts that are interacting with each other. What is your framework that we can walk away with?
Yeah, so this is my second and last graphic I'm taking from Montana. Again, his content is great, so follow him. I hope he doesn't mind, but creds to him. There's a lot of different agentic architectures. I don't want to overcomplicate this. You can go deeper into this. Tarek, you're sending out the slides, right?
I am indeed.
Yeah, so you guys can go deeper this or follow him on LinkedIn. But essentially, there's three different architectures you could think about. So there's sequential, solving problems in a sequence one after another. So like a workflow, but each agent in the sequence has agentic capabilities. So it has multiple tools, but you're defining the order in which the agents work with each other. Hierarchical, and I think this is like this is an interesting one where you have one agent that controls the other agents. So that agent, its entire job is to know what the other agents do and tell them when to do a certain task, and it gets the output and feeds into another agent. That the reason you might want to do that is because there's tool overload. So like if your agent has too many tools, it's going to take long. It's more likely to make mistakes. So by having hierarchical, you can essentially reduce the amount of mistakes because you have like a moderator there. But then you have human in the loop, where the agent doesn't actually do the thing without including your opinion on it. And the reason you might want to do that, actually, I'll go into that next slide. But one thing to know here is that you can combine these. So you can have a hierarchical agent structure with a human in the loop. So these aren't mutually exclusive, but it's just how to think about this.
Yeah, and I guess that brings to your next point, right? If you start with human in the loop, and there's reasons for that, you can add on a sequential or hierarchical layer as you see fit for scaling your use cases.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if you've read the Apple paper recently, but they basically did this giant research study to prove that AI agents, AI in general, doesn't really create. It doesn't understand causation. It just understands correlation. So it's essentially just always extrapolating. And that's why, like, I don't know a better metaphor to describe this, but AI is really smart, but it's like not that intelligent. I think smart, intelligent mean the same thing, but you get what I mean in that your human element to it is ultimately going to push the technology further. And it's like that last bit of strategic thinking is what AI can't do, which is why you might want to do human in loop. So by having a human loop agent, you get AI to do 90% of the work and you just do the last 10%. So you might approve, rewrite, add additional insights, guide the AI in the right direction using your strategic thinking. And so you add creativity where AI is limited. And the best way to be kept in the loop is if you're in B2B and you use Slack, definitely Slack, because your GTM team, they're not going to be logging your sales team, your GTM team might. Your sales team isn't going to log into Cargo to use an agent, but they are going to use Slack and use a Cargo agent via Slack. That's just the reality of it. So in my opinion, the best way to keep a human in the loop and to get the team to use it is to bring the agent to where everyone is already using a tool like Slack.
Yeah, I think from an enablement perspective, so everyone from the revenue ops world will understand this. Um, Usually, revenue ops, GTM, and people are sitting more upstream. So we're just shipping sort of data, package data, and insights to the sales team, right? So there's a distance between the two. Now, if you embed these agentic capabilities into Slack where they already are, that means they're not just receiving anymore; they're also sort of qualifying and working on the information that you pass them, so they become participants in that process. And so I think that's really the big win here from a revenue perspective, allowing that enablement to go further just by making them participate with that agentic question answer. Um, mm, mm, mm. Let's go to use cases, Dan, and we have a bonus here. So our first bonus is coming up. What do you think we should start working on first?
Okay, these are just some ideas. In sales, you can have pre-call research that calls multiple sources of information, maybe composes a pre-frame email based on the client. You can have a post-call follow-up that takes a transcript, updates the CRM fields, post-call follow-up agent, and then you can have stakeholder mapping, searching through many sources and finding out who you should be speaking to at a certain company. Those are like three great sales use cases. In terms of marketing, inbound enrichment and routing, which we kind of showed you today. Content repurposing, I think like content agents are going to be used more and more because ultimately, if you have a piece of good performing content and you're just relying on AI to add some additional insights, but then repurpose it, the output quality is going to be higher. And then ad spend optimizer, I think that's like I think some people are still figuring this one out, but like you have all this data of which ads are performing, what the actual content of the ads are. And so I think we're going to see a lot of AI agents being built in that space, and they already are. There's some dedicated point solutions out there. And then in terms of customer success, a churn risk analyzer, basically looking at product analytics and figuring out when a customer is likely to churn, informing your team. Social sentiment listening, so basically figuring out the online sentiment about your brand or space and giving you insights. And then post-churn accounts monitoring. So basically figuring out where you can re-engage someone and maybe revive a churned account and seeing when the best time to reach out is. That being said, I did a lot of thinking. This took me way too long, but I mapped out 67 AI agent use cases across sales, marketing, and customer success. Like I said, I spent way too much time here. So please check this out and inspire your next agent using this resource. I think the tools required a bit. They can be a bit broad because I wanted to give people the option to use their tool stack, but the agent descriptions and like the ideal setup, a lot of thought went into that. So hopefully that inspires your next agent build.
So you have the QR code there. You can just fork this Google Sheet. We'll also be sending the link to all the RSVP people for the event. So watch out for that. And my offer to you is you take this list, think about which one you want to build, then come to Batch 09, where Diane and I are present. Tell us which use case you would like to build, and we'll build it with you in that channel. And so then we can all get started attacking this list together. So that's our offer to you. Gilles, same to answer your question. Your use case is interesting. Come to the channel and we'll build it together as you like. Let's go to sort of the last section of this talk, right? And so we're still in the early days. There's a lot of snake oil being sold, as you said, like with every new feature, right? Give us an overview of where you see things headed in the next 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, I know we're running on time here, but I think we're going to see a few different things play out. Like, I think with AI, no code is becoming more and more powerful over time, but there's also really powerful low code solutions out there. So I think we're going to see this battle of like, is the no code app going to win? Is the low code app going to win? Is it actually like straight coding frameworks that are going to win in terms of AI agents? But I think there is going to be some sort of friction there. Maybe both coexist, but how these markets tend to work is like you have all these players, but then they start to consolidate because of herd mentality and access to knowledge and time to value and observability, like all these different factors. So I think that's going to be a battle we'll see. I think influencers are going to, you're already seeing this, like templates for this stuff are going viral. So I think when we're talking about a platform like Cargo, someone is going to spend an absurd amount of time perfecting an agent, and then they're going to give that to other people. And so that might actually work really well. But then there's going to be a thing of like platforms versus point solutions. Like I think right now for customer support, Intercom is great. But what if someone on Cargo or another agent builder builds something that's just as good and you can consolidate your stack? Like, so I think customer support, like Intercom's killing it. But I think like when we're thinking about sales and marketing use cases, are people going to use a bunch of different point solutions and have like tool proliferation, or are they going to build on one platform and host all their agents there? So those are my thoughts. Tarek, anything to add there?
Yeah, I feel like it's a similar trend to what we've seen in the dev tooling space and then earlier in the revenue tooling space, right? It's about ease of accessibility, and then it's about like one orchestration layer that sort of brings everything together. And so my bet is that one of those influencer builds will come from that Batch 09 channel. And so hence I'm so bullish in pushing people there. Let's see if I improve it right. Um, Quick advice on how to nail your next agent, and then we'll talk about your next project and how to join this community to build together. Um, Three golden rules, Dan, to take away.
So I've had agents before that work great, and then a week later, I managed to break them or figure out how it totally messes up. So be fully expect that you're not going to get a one-shot implementation. You're going to have to trial and test. That's normal. And so that goes into with maintenance. You're probably going to need to fix them at some point. Again, that's normal. And then documentation is key. I've spoken to so many companies who build really cool stuff and no one uses it. So there's no point in building it if no one uses it. So sales enablement was a function around getting the sales team to use like the CRM and all the tools. We're going to need like agent enablement to make sure that teams actually use the agents that, the more technical people in their team are building. So I think getting your team to use it with documentation is going to be key.
And now we go to this much awaited section. Dan, you and Fivos are at an undisclosed location, churning it out day and night, right? What are you up to? What have you been building?
Yeah, so AI First Growth Studio, helping technology companies build AI agents for GTM and automated outbound systems. There's a lot to explain. I've been putting my heart into this for the past months. Right now, if you go to workflows.io, there's a sign up page where you'll hear about our launch. But next week, we're going to be launching a pretty crazy website that's going to explain what we're doing. And so if you're a tech company that wants to implement these types of agents or any GTM use case in general, we could probably help you out. So make sure to sign up on our website or just reach out to me on LinkedIn using the URL there.
Follow that QR code and you can sign up to that waitlist. Very quick plug for Cargo, and here I answered Tash's question as well. So Cargo is built for this sort of workbench for GTM engineering people, so that they can impact their pipeline, close more deals, have better conversion. And agents are just a part of this spectrum, right? Um, Typically, all of these sort of tools that we give to your disposal, you can use these to attack your GTM use cases. You can sign up on the Cargo website for a free account, and that gives you access to a number of free credits that you could use to start building. If you run out of those credits, join the community, and that allows you to have a few more free credits. And so everything is usage based. Those credits you can use to do enrichments, you can use that to run your workflows, or to use Cargo's data warehouse to store your data, etc., etc. If you have questions about that, come into the community and we can talk more. And then now, as I said, the much awaited QR code. If today you are not part of the GTM engineering community and you're curious about agents, how to build them, then this is the time to join Batch '09. So that QR code takes you to a form. That form will intro you to the rest of the batch, and then you can just get started. So Gilles, if for example you want to build out your use case, just get into that channel and we'll start bringing it out for you. If there's people who are already into the GTM engineering community but differently themed batch, just ping me on Slack, and I will get you into the right channel. And so Dan and I are present there. We're looking to spend the next month building agents. So we're trying to map all the use cases that people are talking about. Don't hesitate, bring your ideas, and maybe the next influencer build will be in this channel. Dan, I know we're a little bit over time, so thank you everyone for staying tuned in. One last message for the audience.
I think the same message that I started with. We're all early here, and so I think the fact that you guys are building a community is great. So let's all help each other grow our businesses and really figure this out. Because again, we're early and there's so much learning still to do. So don't get overwhelmed, and let's tackle it together if possible.
And so I would like to have a special thanks to Dan for taking out time to build this session and the cargo tooling behind, while preparing for his launch. So Dan, thank you for this. We wish you the best of luck with this project. And obviously, we're going to be working a lot together on your agentic builds. Everyone who tuned in, kudos for being the early people in GTM to try agents. Now, the next step is to take what you've seen here and build. If there's stuff that we haven't answered yet, or if there's stuff that we should do a further session on to dive deeper and build together, then you know where to ping me on Slack, and we'll make it happen. With that said, thank you everyone for tuning in. For the people in the US, happy 4th of July weekend. And we'll be back in the next couple of weeks with a new event, of course, with something agentic. Thank you again, Dan, and thank you everyone for tuning in.
Thanks, everyone. See you.